Hello, everyone. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network, a subsidiary of Global Media Network, LLC. Our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. The views of the guest may not represent those of the host of the station. Folks, I am so excited to have today's guest with me, and I'm going to tell you about my special guest. I'm so honored to have read this book, and I just want to say this podcast today might get emotional, and that's the way it is. It's an emotional topic. I'm already getting emotional. To me, it's near and dear to my heart. With me today is Kelly Cervantes. She is the wonderful writer, talented writer and author of the book, her new book, The Luckiest, a memoir of love, loss, motherhood, and the pursuit of self. She is a best-selling author of Normal Broken. She is an award-winning writer, speaker, and advocate, best known for her blog, Inchstones, and her USA Today best-selling book, Normal Broken, The Grief Companion for When It's Time to Heal, but You're Not Sure You Want to. She has been published in the Chicago Tribune, Cosmopolitan, and Fortune, as well as featured by MSNBC, New York Times, and CNN. She sits on the boards of CURE Epilepsy and the Undiagnosed Diseases Network Foundation, and hosts CURE Epilepsy's podcast, Seizing Life. Born and raised in the Midwest, Kelly now resides in Maplewood, New Jersey with her family. So she's a transplanted Jersey gal. And I want to welcome you, Kelly Cervantes, to Chatting with Betsy.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, Betsy.
Oh, thank you. It is an honor and privilege. I just loved your book, Kelly, and I just want to tell the audience right off the bat, this book is for everyone. This book is for anyone who has or had a sick child, a child with disabilities, had any type of loss. You can relate to this book. I laughed. I cried. I couldn't put this book down. I highly recommend this book, and I really think it should be in every doctor's office and in a hospice. That's how much I really am excited about this book and highly recommend your book. And I thank you so much, Kelly, for writing your book, and it's so authentic, and I love that. I love that you didn't sugarcoat anything. You're my kind of gal. That's how
I think some of the East Coast Jersey girl has seeped into my Midwest bones.
That's how I am. I don't sugarcoat. So first I'm going to ask you, Kelly, is what motivated you to write your wonderful book?
This book has been through several iterations. I actually started writing it before I wrote my first book, Normal Broken, and but I think I needed more space from my own story, and it went through several other iterations, and then I knew that we were talking earlier. I firmly believe in sharing our stories and reading and listening to other people's stories, because I think one of the most beautiful pieces about being human is community and relating to others. And the more that we can learn from each other and hear from each other, we feel less alone. We feel more connected. And I think that we are missing so much of that in this day and age. And then I came across aren't we though?
True.
I came across a quote from Maggie Smith, the poet, and she said, it's from her memoir, You Could Make This Place Beautiful. And she said, we're all nesting dolls carrying the previous versions of ourselves inside of us. And I was so struck by that quote that I actually inspired me for the structure of the book. So every chapter is a different layer of my life, another layer of my nesting doll, and all these different sort of trials and adventures and joys and tragedies that I sort of experienced through my life that have made me who I am today. And while there is so much about my past that I wish I could change, I don't get to be where I am today and enjoy the life that I have now without experiencing and putting on all of those layers that make me who I am.
Oh, that's so true, Kelly. That is so true, and I agree with you 100%. It's our stories. That's why I do my show, not just to have resources so people can hear other people's stories and be reassured that there are other people who are in the same boat and that we are more alike in many ways than we are different. And I think that it's important to share our stories and experiences. And I've been doing that for a few years, sharing. And it's not, folks, we're not looking for pity or sympathy. We want to share with you to give you hope. And yes. This book is just has a lot of stories in it. And I forgot to mention, but Kelly is married to Miguel Cervantes, who played Hamilton in that famous musical, Hamilton. So I forgot to mention that. So that's important to know. Kelly, I'll tell you what, and I said this before, folks, to Kelly, before I started recording, what I love about this book is that Kelly is so authentic, and I love that. And you get the passion, you get the sadness, you get the joy. All of your layers, Kelly, is just beautifully written in this book. Outstanding. I just say it's outstanding. And I would like to quote some quotes that really touched me from your book, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
I love that. I didn't write down the page, but I think you said this in your book. If not, I heard you say it on a podcast. I do not believe that things happen for a reason, but we can make a reason out of the things that happen. I also like from page 237, what I could control was the purpose I created out of the events I experienced, and that has brought me peace. Oh, my goodness, did that touch me. And also from page 96, I learned, I missed that one. Asteroids, I learned, are not fairly rationed. And then from page 100, how fine the line is between stars aligning and stars colliding. I'll tell you, Kelly, that moved me so much. And I said, I can't wait to talk to Kelly. That is so true. And I would like for you to share your beloved daughter, Adelaide. And if you don't mind, I would love to dedicate this podcast to Adelaide's memory, was your daughter, your beautiful daughter. Could you please share about her?
I would be honored to. Thank you so much for asking. Adelaide was born in 2019, and, we really thought, she was, the postpartum nurse said she was a little floppy at birth, but I thought to myself, how dare you? She's perfect. And we took her home, and, everything was going fine, but she wasn't meeting milestones, and she was struggling to put on weight. And we went in to see a neurologist, and we're just going through the course, doing the tests and doing all of the things. But assuming that she is going to be okay. Maybe she's not going to be an athlete. She's not going to be super strong, but that is fine. I was never an athlete either. And so, but then when she was 7 months old, she had her first seizure. and which actually happened to be the exact same week that Miguel landed the role of Alexander Hamilton in the musical. And several months later, she was diagnosed with a particularly devastating form of pediatric epilepsy called infantile spasms, which it has a significant impact on brain development. And for the next several years, our family moved from New Jersey to Chicago for Hamilton, the musical, and I gave up my career to take care of her, which was a grief in and of its own, sort of this grieving this identity that I had as our family's primary breadwinner and going into this role as more of a support staff, supporting my husband's career and supporting my daughter's health. And we have an older son, Jackson, as well, who's 3 years older than his sister. And but Adelaide, she was non-mobile, non-verbal, but by no means does that mean that she was unopinionated or wasn't able to communicate with us. We discovered, or her nurse, one of her nurses helped us discover that, she hated traditional baby music, Baby Shark, anything like that. She loathed that kind of music. And the second she put on Frank Sinatra, she calmed, she opened her eyes. So she was, she went from squawking to cooing. Yeah, she had great taste. And,
she had fine taste.
She really did. For a little girl, she was like, no, I am not listening to that crappy baby music. Give me the good stuff. And then, and her older brother would play with her, and they would wrestle, and sometimes he would squeeze her too hard. And, we were always working on her coordination, her motor skills. But when she wanted to punch her brother in the face, she never had any problem making contact with him to let him know that he was squeezing her too hard. She thought that whoopee cushions were hysterical. She had this vibrant, wonderful personality and just was able to charm absolutely every single person that she met. She would play tricks on the doctors and pretend to be asleep when they would come in so that they wouldn't mess with her. But, all throughout this, she was also an incredibly sick little girl who was having multiple seizures a day and, regressions of the skills that she had acquired, many, many regressions. And then when she was 3.5 years old, we discovered that whatever was causing all of her symptoms, because she was undiagnosed for the duration of her life, whatever was causing it was neurodegenerative. Her brain was actually getting smaller, and there was nothing else that the doctors could do. And ultimately, she passed away 5 days before her 4th birthday, and a light went out in our life, in our family, and I lost my purpose. She was everything. I felt like I had been forced into retirement from this job that I had grown to love. I had initially resented the job. It was overwhelming. I knew nothing about healthcare or hospitals or health insurance, and I had to sort of do a crash course in all of it, and it was overwhelming, and it was hard, and it was frustrating. But I don't think I'll ever have a more fulfilling job in my entire life than taking care of Adelaide.
Wow, there is just so much to discuss here, Kelly. I might have to have you on a second time. When I was reading the book, I was saying not only is your child sick and you became a caregiver, you moved to Chicago where you didn't know anyone. Miguel started on doing a Hamilton, and you had to find a support system. And you did Adelaide's 2 feedings. You suctioned her. You gave pure love and caring. And I'll tell you, Kelly, when reading your story, when we've been caregivers and that person dies, it's like, who are we? What do I do now? What's my purpose? And this is a common thread among grievers when we lose someone. My husband had early onset Alzheimer's, and Josh, our son, who had special needs himself, but he was great with his dad. It was like, he came home from work and he's like, oh, I miss Dad. What do I do now? I'm not taking care of him. And so I could relate to your feelings in that way, like, who am I? And you had to learn to advocate for Adelaide and yourself and your family to get the right medical care. There was a story about getting a prescription medication and what you had to go through.
Yeah.
And just
I
scheduling doctors.
Often, I just getting in to see the right doctor, and I think of all of that so often, and we have every advantage going for us. I have, higher education. I'm white. I speak English as a first language. Everything, and my husband is in a high-profile job. We have connections that can help get us in, all of these things, and still we struggled to get the care that we needed, to get the medication that Adelaide needed, and it does not. I think about that often. If it was that hard for us, and we have every privilege and advantage, how hard is it for so many others out there?
It's tough. Well, I can tell you that it's tough finding the doctors. My son had global developmental delay. I didn't get a proper diagnosis till Josh was 13. Josh is 41 now. And, when someone tells you, oh, your child's not developing right, or I noticed with Josh, everyone thought I was crazy, Kelly, because I noticed that something was amiss. And I was told, oh, you're looking for trouble. And I didn't have support. But I was right. My instincts were right. And it's that initial, right there, that's grieving right there, that your hopes and dreams that you had for this child are now have to be something else. That's a loss right there that people don't understand. And then the frustration in getting a diagnosis. I want a diagnosis. No matter what it was, I wanted it. And I did not receive it. And I was told Josh was, had ADHD and all this other stuff. Go ahead, go.
I was just going to say, it is, that's another piece that I don't think a lot of people understand. I certainly didn't. I thought that you go to the doctor, they run some tests, and then they tell you what's wrong. And with Adelaide, we ran tests, we ran more tests, then we would go to a different hospital and run those tests all over again. And no one could ever tell us what was the cause of her seizures, of her regressions, of all, it wasn't, I had actually gotten her enrolled into the Undiagnosed Diseases Network, which is a program funded through the NIH. And when we knew that she was dying, I had arranged that her brain be donated to them. And so it was actually 4 years after she passed away that they came to us and said, we finally think we know what was the cause. And it was a gene that she had inherited from Miguel and I. So there was a 1 in 4 chance that Miguel and I, if we were to have another biological child, which we are not planning on, but that the child would have the same condition as Adelaide. And our son, we now know, is also a carrier of this gene. So if he wants to have children, his partner, they're going to have to run tests but it's such important information. But medicine isn't always like an episode of Dr. House or something like that. It is. Right. It can be this horrible diagnostic odyssey that you are on for years, and without a diagnosis, you can't find a cure. You don't even have a prognosis. And you don't have a community to belong to. It's really an alienating experience.
It is. And then I don't know if you experienced this, Kelly, where you have family members asking you, oh, what did you do wrong? Would you believe my younger brother called me up and asked me what I did wrong? Like I don't have enough guilt. Like we have unjustified guilt of, and I know you did bring that out in your book. Like you wonder, okay, what did I do? Did I do something when I was pregnant? Did I take something? You know, and we blame ourselves of, why this happened. We ask, why did this happen? Why is it my child? Excuse me. And it's very difficult when you don't have that support system. And it is very important to have go to a support group if you can, so you could gain knowledge, friendships, information. Did you find it difficult finding a support group? Not knowing Adelaide's diagnosis?
Yeah, it was. So I clung to the epilepsy community because that was the symptom that affected our lives the most. So it was absolutely bizarre, coincidental, if you believe in those things. But when we were living in New York City before we moved to Chicago, I was working for Tom Colicchio's restaurant group, and I had planned and coordinated an event for this nonprofit that was based out of Chicago called CURE Epilepsy. And I knew nothing about epilepsy. Adelaide wasn't even born yet. And I thought, they were lovely to work with, and I hope they raised a lot of money at their event that they were hosting at the restaurant. And then, flash forward a couple years, and Adelaide is diagnosed with epilepsy the same week that Miguel books Hamilton, and we find out that we're moving to Chicago. And I remember this organization that did something with epilepsy, and that they were based in, of all places, Chicago. And so I reached out to them and let them, and asked for help. I asked for connections, for doctor recommendations, and was just so grateful for the support that they provided. And then it was really through a Facebook group for infantile spasms that I was able to connect with some people in Chicago. And what I say about any sort of online or Facebook groups is that they can be tricky places because you have people with varying at varying ends of whatever grieving or medical spectrum. So as much as you can try and get to know people in real life, in person, I think that that's where we get the most value and the most support out of those connections. So I was able to find a couple of people in one of those groups, invited them over to brunch at our house with their children, and it was like my world opened up, because I would hang out with my son's friends' parents, and they're talking about what soccer class they've signed their kid up for, or where they're doing swim lessons. And I'm like, that's great and all, but what I wanted to find out about was, okay, where are you going for physical therapy? What medicines have you tried? Which leg braces do you work the best, or what sneakers did you buy to work the best with those leg braces? These were the questions that I wanted to be talking about with other parents. And so being able to sit around with our kids who are all, and then it's not sitting around on the playground and your kid is the one that is disabled. Your kid is the one that doesn't look like the rest of the kids. You're sitting around with a whole bunch of parents, and all of our kids are disabled, and they're all a little bit different, and that's okay. There's normalcy in that, and I think that our hearts need that. Yes.
I find support very important. I joined a support group once Josh was diagnosed, and I learned about private special ed schools. And when Josh was graduating from 8th grade, I told the township I want him in this special ed school. And but the only way I found out about it was through a support group. And same thing with dealing with Alzheimer's. People need support. I want to tell the audience, as I share this with the audience, dealing with epilepsy, I can't even imagine infantile epilepsy, because I worked as a nurse. I worked in a state institution, and those clients had seizures. Some of them had to be sent out to the hospital. And I couldn't even imagine, Kelly, being in your position, dealing with your child, doing that, suctioning or giving them, injections. I just really admire you, because that had to be tough. And the clients, a lot of them at the institution were nonverbal. As you said, Adelaide has her own personality. That is so true. These clients had their own personality, and I would talk to them. And the staff would say, Betsy, who are you talking to? I said, I'm talking to the clients. Don't you know they can't talk? I said, well, I know that. Don't you know that they're human and they can see and feel and hear? They thought I was, they thought I was a little cuckoo.
No, but I think that disability is not a bad word. There is nothing wrong with people who move through the world, who communicate in the world through different ways. There is what is typical and what we are used to and what this world is built to accommodate, and unfortunately it is not built to accommodate a lot of different types of people, but that doesn't make them wrong. It doesn't make them bad. It just makes them different. And I'm so that there's a part I wish that Adelaide didn't have to suffer, but I do not. But I am so grateful for how she opened up my eyes to the world of disability and how wonderful and beautiful it really can be.
Absolutely. I learned not to ever take anything for granted. And I always say, therefore, by the grace of God, go I. We don't realize what it takes to walk, button a shirt, tie our shoelaces. We take this all for granted. But there are people who have, and children who have difficulties with that. And I always am a big disabilities advocate. And I always say in my show, when I talk about disabilities, treat everyone with respect and dignity, because every human being deserves to be treated that way, with respect and dignity. From children up to the elderly, whether they have a disability or not, everyone should be treated with respect and dignity, and I'll never stop saying that until I can no longer talk. Kelly, I really felt for your family, and I want to talk about your son, Jackson, because I think it's so important when there's a sick child in the family. I mean, I only have one child, but there's a balancing act. You giving time to Jackson, him understanding his sister is ill, but the love that he has for his sister, that had to change him. Also dealing with the grieving, and I love that you let Jackson express himself in the book. That is so important. And I've also said that, we need to let our children express themselves. And I love the story where Jackson said that something where he thought the family was strange, or and you said, oh, you mean you don't like the epilepsy? And you said, well, I don't like it either. And my son, when he complained about changing his father's diaper and he didn't like it, I said, I don't like it either, or not like an Alzheimer's, so that's fine. They need to express themselves. I love that you did that, Kelly. You're a great mom.
Thank you. I try. I feel like I was very fortunate to have great parents who led by example. Mental health, my mother was a therapist, and so I grew up with mental health being just as valuable and important as our physical health. And I am extraordinarily grateful for that value, because I certainly needed that in my adulthood. And as I was parenting my children, it was hard and it was not fairly balanced. Jackson often got the short end of the stick. I mean, he would come in to Adelaide's bedroom and she would be having a seizure and I would be holding her, and he would say, hey, Mommy, can I have a snack after Adelaide's done with her seizure? And I'd be like, sure, honey, give us a few minutes. Like, these are not normal situations for a young child to be in or to understand. Like, he was always putting himself after his sister. And that was, and he had to, because it was life or death with her. He just wanted a snack. But it's not fair. And I think acknowledging that it's not fair, allowing him to say, he was like, he said, I hate our family. And I was like, you don't get to hate our family because we all love you, but you can hate epilepsy. And just giving him that ability to say that, a place to direct his anger and his frustration, which he was totally right in feeling. There was no, but we found ways. We found, and every child is going to be different. In my mind, I thought it was better for him to sleep at our house every night. And so if Adelaide was in the hospital and Miguel was at the theater, I would have someone come to the house so that Jackson could sleep in his own bed. But it turns out through talking to him, that wasn't what was best for him, because he felt like he was being left behind. He felt like everyone else was somewhere else, and he would ask me, he's like, why can't Adelaide have a babysitter at the hospital? And so we realized what was actually better for Jackson was for him to have a sleepover at a friend's house. And so we, good friends of ours in Chicago, essentially, they adopted Jackson as another child in their family, and Jackson had a room at their house and, would do dinners. And so with Adelaide was in the hospital, he knew where he was going, and it made it more fun. It made it like he was getting to go and do something special as well, and that's what worked for him. And so I always emphasize to families that you have to talk to your kid, and every kid is going to respond differently as to what is important and what they need. And it broke my heart. After Adelaide died, Jackson didn't want to talk to me about it. He wouldn't. He refused to. He was trying to protect me. But he would talk to a therapist. And so as much as it broke my heart that I wasn't the person that he could come to, he was talking to someone, and that was what was important.
Yes, that's important. I'm a big mental health advocate, Kelly. Huge. And it's so important for children, everyone, to have counseling, grief counseling, even during a illness, counseling, marriage counseling. There's just so many layers to your story. And, it's hard in a situation when your child, and there's a child that's ill and a child who dies, keeping a marriage together, balancing everything, your wife, your mom, and all these balls up in the air that you're trying to juggle. And a lot of marriages fall apart, as you probably know, during a child's illness, a child's death, because maybe, there's like a communication, or one partner feels that the other one's not grieving or not understanding. How did you and Miguel keep your marriage together? And I love the fact that you had scheduled sex night.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
But that's important. That's important.
It was so important. And and it's, I think the way that we kept our marriage together, it changed as time went on, and as we were managing different things in, right after he booked Hamilton, and I resented him, and we had a really, really hard time as we were navigating. We had entirely new roles in our marriage, and it was really challenging to figure out what that balancing act was. And it came down to an immense amount of communication and listening to what the other person needed, and yes, scheduling a sex night, because it wasn't going to happen on its own unless it was put on the calendar. And I know, I write in the book that 20-year-old Kelly would have been just appalled, but 30-something-year-old adult woman, wife, mother Kelly, that it's such an important part of a marriage. And so it not only not only for the physical aspect of the relationship, but for me also the conversations that we would have afterwards, just sort of laying there in the dark, and it opened up this safe space where we could talk about the tough stuff. We could talk about what we were noticing in Adelaide's care, or, you know, our fears that she was dying, or any of these things. And then, you know, after she passed away, I felt like we had to go through all of that all over again, because while we had been so much on the same page during Adelaide's life, after she died, we handled that so differently. And I hear this from so many couples that, you know, they've grieved differently. And the truth of the matter is you may be grieving the same person, but the relationship that you had with that person was different. The secondary grieving, the secondary losses, all of that is going to be different. And so, and also the general people. I am a very emotive, raw, honest person. I cannot be anyone other than who I am, and that is just you get what you get. And so in my grief, it was explosive. I felt like I would call it werewolfing, where it would just, my grief would take over, and I had very little control. Meanwhile, Miguel, after about the first couple weeks, really seemed to kind of be normal-ish. And I didn't understand that. I never saw him grieve. I never saw him cry, and it made me feel so alone. And I would later find out through marriage counseling that he was grieving, but it was something that he preferred to do privately. And because he preferred to do it privately, when he saw me werewolf, he assumed that I wanted to be alone. And so he would give me space. But the reality was that all I really wanted was for him to come and sit next to me and hold my hand and not necessarily say anything, but just be there with me. But because we were experiencing this grief in such wildly different ways, we didn't necessarily know what the other person needed. And but you have to talk about that. And then I think you also have to have realistic expectations about what someone is capable of providing for you. We put so much pressure on these relationships with our significant others. And, you know, if the sink breaks and your partner can't fix it, you don't get mad at them. You call a plumber. And so I think that sometimes, like, Miguel could not be there for me in my grief. And that is okay, because you know what? He was grieving too. This was challenging for him too. And he had this emotional limitation. But, you know, I can call a friend and they can be there for me in that way. And so sometimes we have to outsource these emotional needs of ours. And as soon as we sort of understood each other's limitations, we were able to move through our grief in a much more compassionate way. Miguel, to his credit, may not have been able to be there for me in a physical, in-person way, but never once did he make me feel like my grief was too loud or too much. He always held space for that, and I never felt judgment from him. And so it's a balancing act, and it's going to change, but you have to keep those communication lines open as to what you need and be open to outsourcing when necessary.
Absolutely. Oh, I agree 100%. Because men are different than women emotionally and how they show emotion. And that's where sometimes there's a lot of misunderstanding. So, that's why I say it's great to get a counselor. And I love how the story of how you and Miguel met. I want to point out that Adelaide was not your first loss. You were pregnant.
No.
And the baby Elvis, that your dad nicknamed Elvis, that he had underdeveloped lungs, right?
Yes.
And he had a fatal fetal Anomaly.
Anomaly,
And
yeah.
Anomaly, yes. I can't get the words out. I want to give you so much credit for writing this in your book. And you chose to terminate the pregnancy. I'm sure you got a lot of judgment about it. And you know what? I do not judge anybody for making any decision. I'm glad I was never put in that position to make a decision. But I am so grateful to you that you wrote this in your book for other people
Thank you.
who were in your situation, because that's brave. That takes a lot of bravery to do that, in my opinion, Kelly. And I want to thank you for sharing that. That had to be very difficult. Did you have support from your family with your decision?
Yes. My parents were very supportive. Miguel's immediate family was supportive, but there was judgment on the fringes, and that was really, really tough. I had no idea prior to discovering that Elvis, like, he wasn't going to survive birth. He was never going to be able to breathe on his own, and for me, I do not judge anyone their choice. For some people, they want to carry that child and hold them, and I get that, and I love that for them, and that's beautiful. For me, that was not the best choice. I was in a public-facing sales job, and I do not think that I was strong enough to stand in front of clients every day with a pregnant belly and have them ask me and be excited, only for me to know that my child's birthday was also going to be their death day. I am a very strong woman. I could not have done that. And so this was the decision for our family, and terminating for medical reasons is very real, and most women do not discover what those medical reasons are until their 20-week anatomy ultrasound. And I know that sounds so late, but that's where we are with science, and it is what it is, and I'm so grateful that I live in a state where that was an available option to me, and my heart breaks for all of the women out there who are not given that option, because it is so personal, and I do not think that any parent, any unborn child should need to suffer because a fully safe procedure is determined to be unavailable or illegal by politicians and not by doctors.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know what I would do, myself in that situation.
And I don't think anyone does until they're in it.
Does, really.
I don't think you can possibly imagine.
You can't, and that's why I people should not judge. And I've come to the conclusion, Kelly, that people should not judge. People sometimes don't have the emotional intelligence. Forget about mental intelligence. They don't even have the emotional intelligence, to have empathy or compassion for anyone, or nor would they understand that not all disabilities are visible, that they're not all outside the body, and people shouldn't judge others. But I really say bravo to you for mentioning this in your book, the situation that you faced and the judgment that you felt by others, which, there's that saying, if be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And, people just need to, if you can't say anything supportive or you don't know what to say, then just be quiet, because no one needs your judgment in going through this life-altering situation. Nobody has a right that's between you and your partner, your husband, and your family. Excuse me. So I give you, a lot of credit, because we should not judge unless you've been in their shoes. If you haven't been in their shoes, then don't say anything. That's just how I feel about it. You had met Susan Axelrod. Can you tell us about that?
She is wonderful. So Susan Axelrod is the founder of CURE Epilepsy, the organization that we became involved with in Chicago. We connected right off the bat because she also had a husband who was well known with a big job that also wasn't around as much. She also, her husband is David Axelrod, who's a big campaign manager and advisor to President Obama. And, so we sort of were walking these parallel paths, and she got it, and she understood this. She had also given up a career to take care of her daughter who was diagnosed with epilepsy, who happened to be the same age as I am. And she's a trailblazer in the epilepsy world. Prior to Susan Axelrod and several other mothers, they were sitting around the kitchen table and they were just frustrated with the way epilepsy was talked about. It was talked about living well with epilepsy. There were no scientists, no doctors. No one was talking about curing it or finding different cures, because epilepsy is really a spectrum disorder, and there's so many different kinds, so many different reasons people have seizures. And so there will be eventually multiple cures necessary, but no one was even talking about that. And it was really her and several other mothers who changed the way that science thought about epilepsy. They put the idea that there could possibly even be a cure on the roadmap, and now, 25 plus years later, we are on the cusp of several cures for epilepsy, for different kinds of epilepsy. And, we have some surgical cures already, and it's the power of mothers and parents in general, and the fire that they have inside of them to really make big changes in this world. And I'm just beyond grateful that I get to have her as one of my life's mentors.
Oh, that is wonderful. I feel, Kelly, that Adelaide gave you a purpose. You became an advocate. And look at what you are doing, probably something that you didn't think you would do, because grieving changes us. Advocacy changes us. We become advocates. I never thought I'd be talking to people, interviewing people. This came out of my advocacy for Alzheimer's, being in my car, talking about the myths. Just a wonderful legacy that you're doing in honor of Adelaide. And I feel that, and I love how you honor Adelaide's memory for her birthday. I honor Matt, my husband, on his birthday and, Father's Day and whatever occasion. And I love how you do that. And I just have to get in that you adopted a daughter.
Did.
And that is so sweet. That's a blessing.
She was a bit of a surprise, and she brought sunshine and rainbows into our life. Adoption, being a mother by adoption, is a whole other kind of motherhood journey, because Anessa comes to us with her own trauma. She, her family had to break apart in order for her to join our family. And so, with every new love, there is this, the opposite side of the coin is grief. And, but I'm still so incredibly grateful. And she has her own relationship with Adelaide, which is really so beautiful. And I think that's because I have kept Adelaide's memory alive, because her pictures are all over our house, because we throw her a birthday party every year. My daughter Anessa, who never knew Adelaide, gets to have a relationship with her sister, and I think that lets me know that I'm doing something right.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I really do. I'm seeing more people now on Facebook showing pictures of their husbands or wives and their anniversaries and birthdays. And I like to think I was a trailblazer in that, because I would honor Matt's birthday, and I would say, you know what? What do you do? Just forget someone that you lived with more than half your life? No. If you want to honor them, you do it. Who cares what people say?
Yep.
The first year that Matt died, we got a cake, we blew out candles, and we sang to Matt. I don't care what people thought. And I just think that that's so beautiful. And I feel, Kelly, that the best way we could honor our loved one's memory is by honoring them, by remembering them, and doing things for others, helping others, and that's what you're doing. So
that's the healing part. Thank you. I appreciate. No, that's the quote that you said earlier. I don't think that things happen for a reason, but I do believe that we can make reason out of the things that happen, and there will never be enough reason for having to lose Elvis and Adelaide, and for the losses that my son has experienced and everything that our family has gone through. However, I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make reason out of it, and helping others, and writing books, and being an advocate, because it helps me heal, and it helps me feel closer to Adelaide.
Yes, and I love that you said in your book, and I don't remember exactly, but this is what the message that I got, and I said, I'm thinking to myself, good for you, Kelly, that you realize you're not going to be the same person. And that's what we have to realize when we lose someone. Whether a child or spouse, a parent, we're not going to be the same. It changes you. How that changes you is up to the individual, whether you're going to be a better person, learn from it, or not. And that's where therapy comes in, which I highly recommend.
Yep.
And I just want to thank you so much for coming on. The Luckiest. How did you come up with the title of your book, and what does that mean to you?
So The Luckiest is actually a song by Ben Folds, and Miguel sang that song to me when he proposed, and it was our first dance. So it was this fun story that I sort of got to pull through the book. But beyond that, luck is something that I have sort of grappled with for my entire life, and I think a lot of people have looked at a social media profile page and been like, wow, they are so lucky, seeing Miguel and Hamilton and all of the really amazing cool things that he got to do, or that we got to do with him. And but luck is really all about perception. It is the time frame that you're looking at. It is what you allow someone to see, or what someone is capable of seeing. And but at the end of the day, I don't think anyone would look at my life and be like, wow, she is the luckiest person out there. But I'm not the unluckiest either. And I truly feel like I am the luckiest because I got to be Adelaide's mom.
Oh, that is beautiful. And where can people hear your podcast?
Absolutely. Seizing Life is the name of it. Yeah. It is produced by CURE Epilepsy. It is available everywhere you listen to podcasts.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Kelly. I have to have you on again. I really do, because
I would love
I would love to discuss more about your book, but I also like to discuss CURE Epilepsy and your podcast, because you're a great resource. And your podcast is a great resource, and I really am all about promoting resources. That's what Betsy is about, providing resources for people to have a better life and to be knowledgeable, because these resources weren't around when I needed them, or when I was younger, and now they are available. I want people to know about it. All resources that can help them. Where can people buy your book, The Luckiest?
It is available everywhere books are sold, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or always at bookshop.org, your local bookstore. They can order it for you if they don't have it in stock. And you can also follow me on Facebook or Instagram. I also have a Substack. Just type in Kelly Cervantes and I'll come up.
Great. And how can people connect with you about your book? Do you have a website? Or
kellycervantes.com. kellycervantes.com, or Facebook or Instagram, or Substack. Any of those are good.
Oh, that is great. Oh, thank you so much, Kelly Cervantes, for coming on, for writing your book. You were amazing, and I want to spell Kelly's last name, Cervantes. You heard Kelly Cervantes today. Her book, The Luckiest, a memoir of love, loss, motherhood, and the pursuit of self. I highly recommend reading this book. It will change you. It will. If you lost someone, it will change you to read this book. It will help you. I can guarantee it, because it really touched me deeply. And I just really admire you, Kelly. You are amazing. And thank you so much for writing your book, coming on my show, and just sharing your life and being so real in your book and our talk. You're welcome.
You,
and you're welcome. My pleasure. And I want to dedicate this podcast in memory of the beloved Adelaide Grace, and I also am going to dedicate it to Elvis, if you don't mind, Kelly.
Oh, of course.
Folks, just, be kind to people. We're all going through a struggle of some kind. And all the information about Kelly Cervantes will be in the blog that Jeannie White, who's the station manager, writes, and Jeannie produces the show. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, who's CEO of Passion World Talk Radio Network, makes this all possible. And I want to thank Lissa Warren, who is president of Lissa Warren Publicity, PR, who arranged this interview. And I want to thank you, the listeners. Thank you for listening. If you don't already subscribe, Chatting with Betsy is for free on Spotify, Spreaker, iHeart, Amazon Music. Please share the show. Tell people about Kelly Cervantes. Tell people about this book, about CURE Epilepsy, the podcast, Seizing Life. We're here to help you. I'm here to help you and to provide resources, and I get very passionate about that. And I just, again, thank you all for listening. The show really touched me. I'm telling you, this book touched me. And I don't say that about many books, but sometimes you read a book and you're like, wow. And I have to keep this book. This is a book I cannot give away. I have to have it and refer back to it for when, if I do feel down in the dumps, this book will brighten me up. And as I always say at the end of the show, you can follow me on Facebook, Betsy E. Wurzel, Wurzel. And in a world where you can be anything, please be kind and shine your light bright, because we need it now more than ever before. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network, a subsidiary of Global Media Network, LLC. Bye-bye now.